Great, a relatively large amount of you. Who has downloaded the version 5.5 and played with that a little bit? Oh, very few. There's a really amazing feature which I'll hold off till the end to show you in here. And also we have Chris Nelson coming up after the break who's going to talk about his editing with Media Composer, who actually edits a little show or edited a show called Lost. So we have some great footage here. So Media Composer I am running on a Mac laptop. So laptops, desktop, Mac, PC, we're platform agnostic that way. So
did you see with the tail end? Yeah, probably in the water.
Some great footage. Again, Michael talked about DNX HD. This is DNX HD 36 megabits per second. So really great quality. And film editors today are basically taking their work, putting it on a laptop, editing at home, editing on an airplane, and then taking a sequence and linking it back to the media that they have at the highest quality if they're editing with that back in the edit bay. So some features that have been added with Media Composer is, the first thing I want to point out is a button here, a little window called the Smart Tool. Thanks to Pro Tools, to the Final Cut users, we've implemented this as an easy way for you to learn how to use Media Composer, for the people who think that Media Composer is difficult to learn.
It's awesome.
So the Smart Tool basically gives you an interactive timeline. Media Composer editors are used to having a timeline that you're not implementing or moving clips around until you tell it to. So with the Smart Tool, if I go in and grab let's take this clip, we'll just drop it into our timeline. The Smart Tool is activated by either clicking on the outer portion of the Smart Tool. It is something you can map to your keys. But what it's doing is it's taking tools like your segment modes. Segment modes are being able to take a clip and move it in your timeline. Your trim modes, making those active. And in version 5.5, we implemented the transition manipulation. And again, these can be turned on and off just by the outer edge or by mapping a key to the keyboard. Or we'll also talk about the implementation of the Euphonics technology with your editing systems. So I have a artist series, a new Avid Artist Series control panel, which has faders for audio and automation gain, a touch panel surface, and a little shuttle knob that lets you move throughout your timeline if you'd like. And there's a couple other features with that as well. So going back to the Smart Tool, the interesting thing with the Smart Tool is as you start dragging and dropping clips into your timeline, creating this little masterpiece here, with the Smart Tool active, what you'll see is as I move around in the timeline, I have my trim modes and my segment modes active depending on where I am in the timeline. So you don't have to go to a specific menu to implement these. And also notice with the segment lift and overwrite or the segment extractor splice in, the yellow and the red, depending on where I'm placed over my clip, is going to allow me to do a segment overwrite or a splice, depending on where I am. And even my trim modes, again, are now active, so I can do my trimming, my segment modes, with the Smart Tool being active all the time. Again, that can be turned on or off. So if you do want to turn off the Smart Tool, you can do that and you're working in traditional Media Composer mode. For the people who do know Media Composer, who aren't a huge fan of the Smart Tool, let me show you a little trick. If you go to your timeline settings, you definitely want to go in and enable. Clicking the timecode track or ruler disables your Smart Tools. Select that. Only one segment tool can be enabled at a time. This is huge because in Media Composer editing, you traditionally don't have both segment modes on at the same time. So with one on at a time, what that means is when I go to the Smart Tool, it only has one segment mode on at a time. And if I click up in the ruler or timecode, it disables the Smart Tool. So again, a little tip and trick when you are using your Smart Tool. Now with the transition manipulation, the new button on the bottom here, what we've allowed you to do is when you go into your transitions, if you want to go and generate an effect, and by the way, when you start adding multiple layers of audio and video, you can now enable or disable what tracks here you want to have your dissolve happen on. You don't have to get out of that window and then go back in if you want to do a dissolve. Yay! So if I only want to do a dissolve on the video side, I could go in and change my timing here. I could go in and type in a value. But now with the transition manipulation with the Smart Tool, I can go in and select, change the duration, change the position, and you also get the transition corner display up top here. So what you're seeing is the outgoing edit, the incoming edit, and the beginning, mid, and end of the transition point. So as I go in and change this, you see it all change, you see the outgoing points change, just so you get a really nice idea visually of where that transition is happening. And if you go in and add a transition to multiple points, oh, come on. Why do I need 2 points. Here we go. In and out. If I say apply to all points here, I can go in and define multiple points to do my transition manipulation on. We'll do this one, and we'll do this one. And when I make the modifications, it will change multiples. Okay? So this is new in 5.5 with the transition manipulation. Again, a lot of great control. Let's go in and talk about the control surface, because I'll hold it up so you can see what it looks like. The great thing with these new surfaces, and Chris Nelson is going to talk more about the automation gain portion on the side here, is this again is the Artist Series control. There also is a transport, which is strictly a shuttle knob with buttons, and there also is a mix, which is 8 faders. So depending on what your needs are, you can either have individual units, or with a little Ethernet hub, you could have multiple units on a single editing system. And you can even take off these sides and link them up so you have a really nice looking panel set of controls. Now, I don't want to unplug anything here. Again, we have the faders here. These are all touch sensitive when you're in your automation game. But what I want to point out is the touch panel. This is customizable. All of these buttons here, if I go to my Yukon control settings, and the U control is available in the software, it comes up. This is the Ethernet control software, which when I go in and view it, you're seeing initially, this is just the control surface. If I had multiple surfaces, you would see them right here. We're going to go to our soft keys, and this set of buttons are right on the panel. You also have multiple pages. So all of your Media Composer functionality, trimming, adding locators, trim views, zooming in and out, are fully customizable. You also have your touch screen. So here is initially 5 pages of Avid controls that are right in front of me. But watch how easy it is to customize. We're going to go to the 6th page. These are ones that I've already set up. Things like multicam, the Smart Tool toggle, very important. It's just a button now that I can just hit on the control surface, and it'll enable and disable the Smart Tool. Now to go in and customize, you simply select a button. You go to your commands, and I can say I'd like to add keys. You can set up macros. If you have multiple keys that you want, you can assign that to a single button on the control surface. Or I can go to the Yukon, go to my commands, and these are your Media Composer commands, your Smart Tools, tracks, color correction, trim. All of these are preset inside of the Yukon control software. So now on that button, if I want that to be, take me to the capture tool, watch what happens, it's done. It's now mapped, and it's now, let me go to my 6th page, right here, and enabled. Even if I go in and change things like the color, you can change the color, and I don't know if you can see, but it is actually changing on the little control panel here at the same time. Ooh. People will spend days customizing the color of one button.
Going for the right color.
Exactly. So, You can, again, these are settings that can move. So this is saved with Media Composer. It's an XML file that you can move to another editing system, and all of your buttons will be mapped. Now, we also just have 4 tracks here for the faders. As you move through, there are different banks. You can move back and forth. If you put on a mix to this, you now have 12 faders that have full control when you get into your automation game. So again, a lot of amazing control here. Now, another real important feature that I want to talk about inside of Media Composer that we implemented in version 5.5 is a new find tool. So imagine you have your project, you've captured a bunch of stuff, you have some clips that maybe you want to look for. Let's just go to the clips menu here. And I want to go in and add a new column here. Let's go in and create a column called custom, or a customized column, or comment column. I don't want to go to Finder. Oh, and by the way, this changes depending on what software you're in. So if you are in Finder, your touch panel is Finder buttons. If you're in Photoshop, these are Photoshop buttons. If you're in Final Cut, these are Final Cut buttons. Fully customizable depending on what software you're in. So let's go to the let's change, we'll add some comments. So we now have a comment column here at the end of my Media Composer bin. I think I added it. Here it is. So I'm going to go in and just take and add a couple of comments here. We're going to say this is Jim. This is a shot of Sarah. So this is all information. This is data that may not necessarily be tied to a clip by a name, but it's a comment. It's something that somebody has made for this file. Go ahead and close that, save it out, and we'll bring up our find tool, which, by the way, I had mapped to my little control surface. This is the new find tool inside of Media Composer. And I can type in text. Let's look for Jim. In my clips, any bin in the project, any script in the project, bins and scripts, or my current bin. So, across the entire project, I say find, and look. It found the one clip. I don't see that it says Jim in there, but now if I double click on that, not only does it bring up the Jim clip, but it loads it into my source window. It looked across the entire project for Jim. How about that? You can applaud, it's all right. So you're not just looking in a bin, you can also define any column. If you want to look for in a certain bin, and you want to look for a certain comment, and you can define as much of a parameter as you want to search across your entire project. Now we also have the script. Now the script is important because if you've seen our script sync, our phonetic recognition technology where you can take a text file and link video to it. Has everyone seen that? A lot of people? Great tool, great implementation I will show you shortly. So in the script, I know he says Goodwin. We'll type in Goodwin. We look in the script, we hit find. Oh, look at that. It brings up the script and would highlight around the area where Goodwin is. If you went into script sync, it would have all of the video now with that. So linking to a text file. Or let's say you have locators. Of course, you've gone through and you've taken all of your clips and you have all these elements. Let me just change the size of this bin. And you now want to go in